A very good afternoon to all our participants and our distinguished speaker. The speaker for our first session is Chandana Baksi ma'am, and for the past 25 years, she's associated as a mental health consultant in the development sector and is currently associated with two primary organizations of SWAYAM and Samikshani. And today her title of discussion will be Impact of Violence Against Women on the Mental Health.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for uh, inviting me to share my experiences with SWAYAM here. So I'll be referring mostly to my experiences with the survivors of SWAYAM, but I will also draw upon my clinical experiences because I'll be talking about not only the survivors of violence as we identify them to be women we work with, but also uh, people who have been violent on them. I would like to shed some light on the psychology that is working with them as well. Um, Now, before I start this talk, I would like to clarify uh, how we are defining violence. Now, so far as SWAYAM goes, which is a feminist organization, our definition of violence is very much aligned with the UN definition of gender-based violence, which is any act that causes physical, sexual, or mental harm or suffering to women, including threats of such act, coercion or arbitrary deprivation of liberty, whether occurring in public or in private life. So this is the definition of violence that we are having in mind, keeping in mind when we are discussing the impact of violence on women. Uh, this is the CEDAW definition, okay, the UN definition. Now, what is the relevance of this topic today? Why are we at all discussing it? Uh, let us take a very brief look at what the National Crime Research Bureau report 2021 says. I'll just pick up a few data. In India, in 2021, there's been a record of 6,753 dowry deaths. That's the Indian statistics. In West Bengal, there's a record of 454 dowry deaths in 2021. In India, in 2021, there's been 31,677 incidents of rape of girls and women, that is below and above 18 years. In West Bengal, there's been a record of 1,123 rape incidents. So far as torture by husband and relatives of husbands are concerned, India records 1,36,234 in 2021, whereas West Bengal records 19,952. Now, mind you, this is as per recorded data. And we know that, records, they are the tip of the iceberg, because in our country, violence is normalized. I mean, it's normalized from the very beginning. I mean, parents beat up their children. Dalit boys are beaten to death. Husbands give a whack or two. So, these are not recorded. These go unrecorded. So these are recorded violence. It means that these have been severe cases of violence to begin with, or they have been leaked, reported maybe by someone else, or after repeated incidents, one is forced to go and record and report. And in some cases, very few cases, people who have recorded these incidents, they are enlightened and they are aware of their rights and they are seeking justice. So it is, as I said, it's the tip of the iceberg. Now, we understand from this that, this topic is very relevant even to this day, because this is the data as we have received 2021. All right. Now, coming to mental health, the intersectionality of gender and mental health, that is feminism and mental health, where are they kind of, meeting each other, uh, I would like to draw your attention upon the fact that, you know, violence, as per any definition, feminist, non-feminist, whatever, uh, is something that causes pain. It's a painful experience. And it has been established beyond doubt by now that human beings are hedonists. We are pleasure loving. So any experience which is not only not giving us pleasure, but is causing us displeasure and causing us pain and distress, what would be the impact of such an experience on us? We are about to discuss that. Um, Now for this, I would like to refer to something called the cognitive cycle. I don't know if you are familiar with it. I don't know if this audience has people from or teachers who are teaching psychology. Uh, but in the cognitive cycle, we see that when we are experiencing something, we primarily experience through our sense organs and visceral organs. When we are experiencing something through our eyes or our nose, ears, through our tongue or through our skin, it sends a message to our brain and it triggers thoughts. Thoughts are first triggered. And when we think in a certain way, we feel in a certain way. And it is our feeling or our emotion that prompts us to action. So it's experience followed by thought, followed by feeling, and then action. I'll give you an example. There's a candle, lighted candle. Uh, when my finger goes near the flame, I experience a tactile sensation, which is a burning sensation. The thought is, it is dangerous, and I feel scared, and the action is I remove my finger from the flame. This is a very, very simple cycle, but in our common everyday, day-to-day life, we think that, the moment we experience something, we react in a certain way. But before reaction comes thought and then feeling. Now, when we are growing up, as children in our society, which we know is patriarchal, which is basically very power-centric. Patriarchal, I'm not using the word patriarchy to mean necessarily man-centric, I'm using it to mean power-centric. The center of power can be in the hands of a biological man, or it can be in the hands of a biological woman. That is not really important, but it's power-centric. There's a central source of power, and there's a periphery. There's a center core divide. There's a distributive injustice, and this power is concentrated at the center. That is a typical patriarchal system of state or system of society. And in such a system, how are little boys and little girls brought up? Why I'm going into this is to try and elaborate how when we experience pain, the thought triggered in a man might be different from the thought that is triggered in a woman. I'm going into that. Before that, I would like to briefly go over our conditioning. Now, there's a very famous feminist psychoanalyst, Nancy Chodorow. In her seminal work, it's called The Reproduction of Mothering, she mentions that, little boys, when they're growing up, what happens? The first love object for any child, be it a girl or a boy, is the mother or the caregiver, basically. And she uses the word mother in a very strange way. Mother refers to a function. It can actually be carried out by a biological man. Okay, but the mothering is an action, the nurturing act. The first love object is towards the person who is nurturing me. Okay, my voice is getting broken. Is it better now? Is it better now?
Yes, now it's a bit better.
Okay. So now, when uh, when a child is growing up, when a son, that is a male child, is growing up and is very attached to the love object, which is his mother or mothering agent, after a couple of years, he starts getting the message that his identity is defined not by his likeness to the mother, but is defined by his difference with the mother. I am not like the mother. I have to be different from the mother. And if I'm like the mother, if I'm too attached to my love object, then I'm a sissy. I'm a subject of ridicule. Whereas in the case of a daughter, a girl child, what is happening? Chodoro has shown that the girl child's role model throughout her life remains the mother or the mothering agent. The first love object is the mother, and when she grows up, she wants to be like the mom. So there is no conflict there. So there is a fundamental difference in which, in a patriarchal society, a son and a daughter, they are brought up. And in a sense, if I leave aside the activist lens for a moment, I would say the son experiences some form of violence long before the daughter because of deprivation, this arbitrary deprivation of, suddenly the sister continues to be cuddled and hugged and kissed, but suddenly the son, no matter how much he wants to be cuddled and kissed and, uh, and hugged, he said that you're a son and you have to stay away from the mom. You can't behave like that. You have to be independent. You have to be strong. And this is slowly but very steadily instilled in him that I have to be strong. So now when this boy is growing up and he is experiencing pain, someone beats him up, it is possible that this experience is followed by an automatic thought, which is, I am not strong, I am weak. And if I feel weak and not strong, my feeling would be I will feel challenged. And if I feel challenged, my action would be, it can be anything, but it can also be very aggressive. If I'm challenged, I will do a counter challenge. Whereas in the case of a girl child, when she is growing up, as Chodoro has shown, that, she is she's trying to be like her mom and she's trying to be caring and nurturing, and if she gets hurt, if she receives a reprimand, then the automatic thought, it is possible that her automatic thought would be not around strength or weakness, but around love and unloved. That, I'm not lovable enough, I'm not worthy enough, I'm not being loved. And the feeling that would follow that automatic thought would be that of sadness, getting wounded, hurt, uh, feeling rejected, and the action that would follow the feeling might be an overcompensation to be in the good books once again, to win back that love of the uh, disciplining agent, and or it can also be, withdrawing and crying and all that. So what I'm trying to match with my experience in my clinic and what Chodoro has said is the reaction pattern to aggression that differs between a boy and a girl, and later on very often between a man and a woman. This is not to say that a man doesn't feel humiliated. This is not to say that a man or a boy doesn't feel unloved. But I'm just trying to trace, along with this feeling, there are, when something happens to us, there's a whole gamut of feeling that we're experiencing. There's a whole lot of thoughts. Automatic thoughts are like, it comes instantly, and, we can have multiple automatic thoughts. But it is important to understand that the automatic thought that is triggered by a painful experience in a boy is sometimes a little different from the automatic thought that is probably triggered in the girl. Now, coming back to pain, as I had already mentioned, we are all hedonists. We are all pleasure-loving creatures. Man, woman, child, across the spectrum, across age. So when I'm experiencing pain, the natural or the spontaneous propensity would be avoidance of pain. I would like to avoid that agent, that source that is causing me pain. The example I gave that, when my finger is burning in a flame, I would like to remove my finger from the flame. So avoidance of pain would be natural. But what am I seeing in Swayam? Am I seeing that women who are being humiliated, who are being physically battered, sexually abused, financially controlled, experiencing, restriction in mobility, and very often facing emotional violence. I'll come to emotional violence in a little bit detail because it's very difficult to define, and it is something which is very difficult to prove also. But we have many cases coming with not only physical violence but emotional violence. So in these cases, women who are facing this whole range of violence, are they trying to avoid the agents who are inflicting such pain on them, or are they staying on in a relationship with them? Now, in our country, we know that, very often, but not only in our country, elsewhere as well, it's not easy to part ways. And in many cases, women stay on, and this avoidance of pain, which would have been very natural, which would have been very spontaneous, that is not happening. So what is actually happening, that is also something which is worthy of investigation. Now, before I go on to what is happening, a few words on emotional violence. Emotional violence is something that is committed primarily through omission. We commit violence through omitting something, where women are excluded from a whole range of decision making. They are invisibilized, they are completely ignored, they are neglected. This is a kind of violence very difficult to prove. When I'm beaten up, if I'm given a slap, I will feel hurt. That is emotional violence, okay. When if someone is not hitting me but hurling abusive language at me, that is also emotional violence. But a whole range of emotional violence takes place where women are silenced and they are made invisible. And if there have been cases where it's why a woman comes to me and tells me that every day I cook, every day I wait for him till 12 o'clock at night. He comes from office, he eats, he's with his tab, he's looking at something, and I keep on trying to talk, engage him in a conversation. He doesn't respond. One or two words, and then as if I'm talking to a wall. Sometimes I put less salt, sometimes I add more sugar, but there will be some reaction from him. He will look at me, maybe he will give me a whack or two. She went to that extent. She said, why doesn't he even slap me? Even then I will feel acknowledged that yes, he's aware that a person is present in front of him. This is a kind of emotional violence that we have also, many of us, we have also accepted. We don't even see it as violence. But this is definitely a form of violence which goes unreported, underreported, and justice, it's very difficult to get justice because it's very difficult to prove this is violence in the first place. So whatever it is, women facing emotional violence stay on in marriages, women facing physical violence staying on in marriages, different kinds of violence are staying on in marriages. And why are they staying on? Now, in our country, it is easy to say that they stay on because of practical reasons, because women are not earning and they don't have money. Uh, they are not engaged in productive labor. They're dependent on their husbands for roof, food, and clothing, and that is why they cannot avoid this painful interaction because it's a small price they are paying, small or big or whatever, for their upkeep. I wish this could explain all the instances because we have women coming from all walks of life, from big business families, women who are doctors, who are lawyers, very successful doctors themselves, women in various government uh, offices, teachers uh, who are in abusive relationships for years, college teachers, university professors, lawyers, doctors, and engineers, very, very successful businesswomen who earn a lot, sometimes more than their husband, but they're still there in abusive, extremely abusive relationships. And why is that so? It is often said that it is because of social stigma. Because a separated woman or divorcee is something which is not, well accepted in our society. Now, a society, I mean, who forms society? We are the society. And I understand that, in certain pockets, it is still not a very done thing. Divorce is still not a very done thing. Separation still raises eyebrows, which is true, but for how many days? I mean, does it outweigh the daily dose of physical violence and emotional violence that I'm having to undergo? Does it outweigh this, occasional jibe or, occasional raising of eyebrow or occasional uh, extra inquisitive queries about my marital life? I'm not very convinced because it causes, shame, social shame, definitely to some extent, but um, the cost one pays to avoid that shame, I don't know if it is kind of at par. And women who stay on, when they are asked, they mention social shame, but they also, when we work with them, they also say that not all, some people ask. It's not that always they're asking. They ask for first couple of weeks or months maybe, but after that, they make their own guesswork and they kind of let me be. So it is neither entirely money nor entirely social shame that is keeping uh, us or that is keeping women in abusive relationships. Though we know that avoidance of pain would have been only natural and spontaneous and expected in such cases. So what is actually happening? Um, Now, I would like to talk about three phenomena that I have experienced in Swayam and also elsewhere, which keeps the status quo. There is a concept of cycle of violence, and I'm sure many of you are aware, but I would like to go over it once more. If we look uh, at the pattern of abuse in many households, especially where the abuse is physical and sexual, we see that, there is uh, what we call a cycle of violence. That is, there's a violent episode, which is followed by a phase of calm, It's like a calm after the storm, followed by a honeymooning period where there's an extra gesture uh, on behalf of the abuser who's atoning for his deed, who's very apologetic and very, very sorry for what he has done and is making very affectionate overtures. This honeymooning phase is again followed by a normalizing phase where, like things are once again more or less, plateau zone. Then dhire dhire again, there is an escalation of excitement and agitation, and again, a violent outburst. So violent outburst, calming off, calming down, honeymooning period, plateauing down, enhancement of agitation, again violent episode, then again coming down, this cycle goes. Now in the phase where there's calm and during the honeymooning phase, what we find is the person on the other side, on the receiving side of the violence, that is the woman, sees some hope for change. It's this constant hope. There's a violent episode, but she hopes against hope that, this honeymooning period will last forever. That keeps the marriage going to a large extent. But she's not stupid. She knows that this is a pattern. He makes a promise every time. They come to us, they say that, I know this is not going to last for long, but let us see as long as it lasts. Then again, after a couple of months, she would come crying, weeping, saying that, yes, it's me again. So it's not that she doesn't know, but she doesn't want to accept. So there is a difference between cognitively knowing something and emotionally accepting it. And why is it that I don't want to accept? There are a lot of factors, part of which we have already discussed, like, there is a financial aspect to it, there is a social aspect to it. It's a change. We try to avoid change because we're some kind of a known level comfort zone. That kind of a logic also plays a part. But she's not accepting also probably because of a very unconscious factor that is at work. And here I would like to mention a pattern of behavior that we are used to from childhood. Now, as children, when we were punished or when we are reprimanded, it is usually followed by compensatory behavior by our parents. After, maybe giving us a slap or, being very, very, after scolding us, they would, pull us in and, give us a hug or give us a candy and be nice and, extra affectionate. Extra in the sense that, more than during normal time. To compensate because, I've hurt my child. So, I'm trying to make the pain go away. Now, this is also somewhere, this pattern of getting compensated after a reprimand, that is also probably somewhere deeply ingrained in us. So every time there is a violent episode, and mind you, in our country, if we go by a newspaper advertisement, we'll see that we are still seeking husbands who are older than us. Any important decision, we would like to say that, let me ask him. He is looked upon as a guardian. And in common, ordinary day humor, we also say that, "Tumhar guardian ke jigish karo." Ask your guardian. Bari kotta kothay? Where is the Lord? So, this is a commonly accepted thing. So, I've made a mistake and, I've been reprimanded. And when he'll be in a good mood, or if I am again going back to the old automatic thought that, I'm not worthy enough, I'm not lovable enough, so I have to overcompensate to be, to be more accepting. If my unconscious is working like that, then I would also somewhere secretly, unknowingly expect that, after the reprimand, I will receive a lot of affection and it will be compensated, and that will be sweeter than honey. So this also not only hope but also an expectation. There is a little bit of difference I would like to make here. A little bit of expectation that okay, he's beating me now, but I know after this beating, the kind of love that he will shower on me will be 10 times more than what he would normally do. So I think that also, it is possible, keeps unconsciously keeps us in abusive relationships. So temporary tolerance of pain and expectation of enhancement of pleasure, which would be a little deterred, which will come later. So that is the second thing. First is the cycle of violence, keeping our hopes alive. Second is this punishment followed by compensation, this regressive pattern that we carry in our unconscious. And third, very important, is the sex taboo. In our country, we still believe that sex outside marriage is something which is not acceptable. It is dirty, it is not good. Rationally, we might say a lot of things. There's a lot of pseudo-intellectualism around it. But in practice, if we see someone having a sexual relationship, if we not see, hear of someone having a sexual relationship outside of marriage, we do raise our eyebrows and we tend to get judgmental. So it is not very easily accepted. And we have women coming to Swayam telling us that, Didi, you have done everything for us. They tell us that, you look after our legal needs, you look after, often refer us to shelter homes, to everything. All our needs, you give us jobs, you treat, train us so that we can get jobs and stuff like that. Then why have you left this one very important thing outside your, offering of service? What about our sexual needs? What about our physical needs? So many women stay on in abusive relationships, once again, painful relationships, in the hope or because they feel that they will get pleasure, which is sexual pleasure, only from this arrangement and from no other. So that is also another reason why women are staying on in abusive relationships. But this entire thing of staying on in abusive relationships for unconscious reasons or for conscious reasons which are very practical, whatever it is, what is the impact of this on mental health? Uh, their self-esteem, the way they interact with others, their interpersonal relationships, their quality of work, their interest in life. What is the impact of violence on their mind? The first and foremost, and this is something that all of us know, that if I'm suddenly getting a blow from somewhere, totally unexpected, whatever is unconscious remains unconscious. It's not that, we are like, that is why it is unconscious. We are not conscious of it. Consciously, when I am with my partner, I would not expect to be beaten up suddenly out of nowhere. Uh, so when I receive a blow, the first time, definitely, and many a times for multiple times, it's a big shock for me. It's extremely shocking for me, and I experience trauma. Trauma is something which is a stimulus which I have received suddenly without any warning and which my brain could not process. It is stored separately and it haunts me because it's stored separately. It keeps on haunting me. It comes back in flashbacks. It comes back in nightmare. I'm extremely scared. I'm hyper vigilant. I'm like walking on eggshells. I'm traumatized. When my energy, my psychic energy is eaten up for self-preservation, I'm feeling unsafe. So that is the first impact. Um, now, apart from trauma, my programming, my social programming has been I have to be acceptable, I have to be nurturing, I have to be loving. But here whatever I'm doing is not satisfying another man, or it's not satisfying his family. So again and again I'm being criticized. I'm bending backwards trying to please, trying to placate. So that is a huge stress on me because I'm going beyond my capacity to please. I'm going beyond my capacity to convince myself that things will become all right. And there is also another thing that I should mention here that, you know, very often when we are working with women, when they come to us, when they are criticized, their confidence level is so low, they take the blame and they start, you know, uh, looking at themselves and start trying to spot faults in themselves. It naturally doesn't occur to them that the other person might be the other person's problem. They feel that the problem lies with me. Maybe I have made some mistakes. Something is wrong with me. I'm not able to please him. I'm not good enough for him. That is why he's after another woman, or that is why he's kind of saying such harsh words to me, or that is why he's giving me a whack or two, because something is wrong with me. I am inadequate. So this stress, trying to constantly please and not being able to do that, this causes tremendous stress. And when we are stressed, we know that it affects our overall quality of life. Our performance deteriorates, our relationship with others deteriorate, and we don't have the positive energy. We don't have that experience, that sense of well-being anymore. So first is trauma, then is stress, and then anxiety. Because you see, once again, because no matter how I'm justifying the abuser's behavior, the fact that I'm getting thwarted, the fact that I'm getting reprimanded, I'm receiving pain, and I'm not feeling free, and I'm not feeling getting appreciated, that is definitely causing some anger, some negative feeling in me. Because it cannot be that my self blame and my uh, trying to find the fault in me uh, is exhaustive. That is happening alongside I'm also getting irritated, alongside I'm also getting angry, and I'm feeling sad, and all these feelings I am suppressing. I'm not letting another person see how I'm feeling. With a smiling face, very often I'm trying to endure, and as if nothing has happened, or okay, I'll try and do it better next time, that kind of a thing. So there's a lot of anxiety that is kind of because of a lot of dammed up emotion feeling that is inside me, and I'm again extra vigilant as to when is the next dose of criticism coming my way. So apart from trauma, stress, anxiety, we also have something which is very common and all of us are aware of. That's depression. I feel depressed because I can't, I have to swallow my anger, I have to swallow all the negative feelings, and because I don't have the space, I don't feel safe to vent my own feelings. I don't have the space to vent my own anger, and I feel quite immobile. I feel quite kind of, what should I say, trapped in my situation. And swallowing of anger causes depression. So much so that many women attempt suicide and also commit suicide as a result of domestic abuse. Um, in all this, what is happening is the psychic energy that we are born with, that is getting, I would say, wasted or eaten up in trying to just preserve myself and trying to remain functional. Now, the quantum of psychic energy that we are invested with, that is not unlimited. Part of it is spent on self-growth, and part of it is spent on maintaining relationships. So if the whole lot of it is kind of taken up for maintaining relationships, keeping peace in the family, and the large part that is left, that is only, uh, used up to ensure safety for myself, then where is the energy left for self-growth? So women, not only are they suffering in terms of, their mood, or their kind of feeling low about themselves, their low self-esteem, they're feeling stressed and all that, their potential for growth is remaining completely unutilized, or the psychic energy is eaten up by all the conflict that is happening at home. Apart from the impact on women, I would like to also mention the impact on children, because children very often in our regular families, they are very attached to their mothers. They are the responsibility of the mothers mostly whenever they are home. Now, children also experience depression, but unlike adult depression, we can't expect children to be always crying and, saying that I'm so sad. No, their depression is expressed in the form of irritation, restlessness, sometimes, bullying behavior in school. They're very disguised forms of depression. And how do they cope with this? Because children are formed of both the father and the mother. One is beating up the other. It leads to a lot of insecurity, but how do they cope with the pain that the mother is suffering? They can do it in two ways. One, they become extra protective towards the mother, and now over here, their psychic energy is also eaten up towards protecting the mother. What happens to the energy that is required for their self-growth? So they become attached to their mother, and they're trying to protect them. They also feel extremely helpless because they don't have the power, nor neither the strength, nor the wherewithal to actually protect their mother. That is happening. Or they either become protective, or they identify with the father, with the abuser, and they start abusing the father. Abusing like the father. Sometimes they start abusing the father as well. So whoever they're abusing, it doesn't matter, they adopt violent behavior. So either they're identifying with the mother and becoming like extremely submissive like the mother, and their psychic energy is eaten up trying to preserve, protect, rather than investing in growth and self, or they are imitating the abuser's behavior and becoming violent themselves. So, and depression is common, sense of insecurity is common. They are extremely agitated and anxious, and they are our future. So the impact of violence on children, who are very often, they are the unidentified survivors of violence, because they are not maybe receiving the violence or the physical battering directly, but they are seeing their moms getting so badly abused. So that is affecting them. So that is there. I would like to end today's talk by, pointing out a couple of way outs that I feel might change the situation in a positive direction, because activists are always hopeful, and mental health professionals are also always hopeful, because, our assumption, we start with the assumption that is all men are good. Now, and all of us, we like to live in pleasure, with positive energy. Now, what can be done if we try and intervene from a mental health perspective? In order to stop violence against women, there have been laws, and activist organizations have been extremely active with advocacy, ensuring that survivors can access the laws, And there's also a lot of social awareness programs that are carried out to make people aware of their rights, to make men aware of, how their behavior affects women and children. But psychologically speaking, we believe that parents can do a lot in the, from the time they are bringing up children, which will have a very positive impact on the use of violence in interpersonal relationship. I'm coming to it. All right. Uh, First is in bringing up boys and girls, emotional and physical violence needs to be avoided. Physical violence, many parents of today who are very enlightened, they have done away with physical violence. They don't beat up their children. But emotional violence, I'm sorry to say, emotional violence, it's like it kills your inner self. When you make a child, when you say something to a child or look at a child or make him or her feel that, he's just no good, ekdam, worthless, or, uh, there's no hope for him or there's no hope for her. You're discounting everything that he or she is saying. You're not asking for his or her opinion. I'm not saying that we have to listen to what children are saying, but asking for their opinion, discussing with them certain things so that they feel valued, they feel important, they feel they have a say. They learn to be assertive rather than passive and then aggressive. That is something that is to be encouraged from home. So emotional and physical violence to be avoided. In case we are parents, we are human beings, in case we are violent, either emotionally or physically, towards our children, please do not compensate. Apologize. The moment you realize you've done a mistake, wholeheartedly apologize, saying that this is a behavior which is, it's a mistake and it should not be repeated by you or by anyone else. So no compensation, no buying of beautiful gifts as a compensation or extra hugging, extra cuddling because I have said certain harsh words. No, but just when you calm down, tell the child that why you were angry, not justifying yourself, but you're concerned. You have to say you're concerned because you don't want your child to repeat that behavior. What has been your concern? Say that. But the way in which you reacted was wrong. It was a mistake, and he would not do it again. He would try not to do it again, and he or she should not emulate you or imitate you. So that is there. The third thing which is very important, especially if you are a father or a mother of a son, is to help your child articulate his feeling rather than acting it out. So it is better to say that I'm angry rather than to show your anger. And again, as parents, we have to be role models first. We can keep on saying something, but we are ourselves behaving in a different way. So that will be no good. So again, these are a couple of things which I thought, apart from the regular, things that we do about taking legal action and advocacy and all that, which is like when things go to an extreme and things are reported. But generally in our regular culture, assertiveness has to be encouraged. Physical, emotional violence has to be done away with in bringing up children, whether at home or in school or educational institution. Children have to be consulted, things have to be discussed, things affecting their life. Their opinion has to be solicited, not always listened to, but at least they have to be brought in a discussion. And any act of violence has to be followed by apology, not compensation. And as I said, lastly, encouraging children, boys and girls, to share their feelings, to articulate their feelings, talk about their feelings, rather than suppressing them and acting them out. So these are some of the ways in which I think general use of violence in interpersonal relationship from our childhood can be minimized. That is all. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Chandana ma'am, for your very stimulating talk. And ma'am, we will take up some questions now. The first question has already been posted
Can
by
you please
Dr.
read
Meena.
it out for me, because I am not very good at handling Google Meet, so
Yes,
I
yes, of
lost it.
course. Yes,
Yes.
Chandana ma'am, this is a question which has been posted by Dr. Meenakshi Kulkarni, and ma'am has asked that intimate partner violence, turmoil and angst during COVID-19, shadow pandemic and the study of post-COVID stress disorder. Can a minor research project on this be taken up? And how to collect the data as people wear, this is a very practical issue now, how to collect the data as people wear a mask and do not wish to discuss their problem with anyone. So this is the question that Dr. Kulkarni has for us.
I think this is a very, very important area where work has already started, if I'm not wrong. And, we have a huge mammoth uh, uh, collection of data, especially women's organizations who have been providing, these are secondary data. I mean, I'm not sure if the survivors will be willing to talk. That is also something that we need to put our heads together to find out how we can encourage them to talk about it. But this has been recognized, this has been recorded, and secondary data is available with most women's organizations. SWAM is also one of them, and across India actually. Emotional, there's something it's going before I can read. Can you please read it out?
Yes, ma'am. The next question is by Sakshi Bharadwaj, and the question is, ma'am, emotional violence is not treated as violence in our society. Not many people are sensitive towards this term. We often hear that people saying that it's better than physical violence. I want to ask how an individual can make people around her or him realize this, and from where to get the help if a person going through this, a person is going through this and can't find any help around.
I'll answer the last bit of the question first. If people around you, they are not considering it to be violence, or they're not understanding your pain, then you seek professional help. Because, as it is, you are aggrieved, you're in pain. How many people will you try and go and try and convince that, you're so much wounded? And I am not sure if you're in such a state as to convince, you're in a state where you need someone to share, where you need someone who can listen to you and understand your pain and help you move out of it. So it's better, if you're not finding anyone suitable around you, go to a professional. So far as convincing others are concerned, this is a cultural thing. When this is the same dichotomy that we face. When you're having a physical illness, people go to a doctor because you can see it. When you're having a mental illness, people refuse to go to a doctor. People think that you're making it up, or sometimes there's a stigma that you're pagal. Because why? Because of this reason. Because it cannot be seen. So it is difficult to convince, but I feel that if these people are in a mode to talk and discuss and listen, maybe you can ask them about their childhood experiences, sometimes a comment, sometimes an act which made them feel excluded, which made them feel unloved, unworthy, and help them relate how these affect us, how painful these things are, and how it can tantamount to violence. People find it, far more, they are far less inhibited, in fact, to relate to their childhood incidents than to incidents that occur in adulthood. So I think it might help. Just a suggestion, you can try it out.
Thank you, ma'am. The next question is from Prarthana Agarwal. And the question is, could you explain some theories that relate socioeconomic status of women employment and literacy, and violence against women?
I have no theory at all with regard to this, and my the whatever I have read literature on this says that it cuts across class, it cuts across the education level and everything. But I would be very honest with you, I'm not very conversant with recent researches that are happening. My focus has been mental health. So, I mean, I'm sure there are sociological studies on this, but I will not be able to tell you. But whatever till date we have seen from our experiences, practical experiences, it cuts across people from all sections of society. I mean, no matter how literate or illiterate they are, no matter what kind of economic background, from whichever language groups they belong to, it's all over the world, across all cross sections.
Thank you, ma'am. Ma'am, there is a last post that I will be taking up, and this has been posted by Shomraggi ma'am. Thank you, ma'am, for this comment. She has mentioned that it was a very fascinating lecture. And this is not a question, but rather a comment from her end. And she says that when you were talking about the craving of the recognition from the partner, she was remembering a story by Rajinder Singh Bedi. It's called Lajwanti. And it was a story where Lajwanti accepted beating and abuse from the husband Sundarlal as a symbol for recognition. And it became a habit. And she started missing it when it did not happen anymore.
Yes. Thank you very much. Thank you. Yes.
Yes. So are there any further questions?
Hello? Hello?
Oh, yes.
Yes, I have asked a question in the chat box. Could you please read it? It's the last question, I guess.
Last question. I'll just check. Yes. Payal, we have got your question. So Payal has posted a question: how choice, or rather of non-choice, of abortion can cause a subtle and nuanced level of violence, both physical and psychological violence. Significantly, this is a mode of violence which operates at macro level, since legal and social processes are involved now. So how does this macro level violence affect women? This is our last question for the session. Ma'am, please, you will answer.
How does it macro level violence?
How does this macro level violence affect women?
Okay. See, so far as abortion is concerned, state interference, if you're talking about macro level, state interference in the decision to, in an individual's decision to keep a child or to abort a child, it's an extreme form of state violence, I would say, which is being endorsed and which is being accepted by people sometimes without realizing. In some cases, feminist organizations are protesting against it. But, I mean, the impact on us, any macro level phenomenon, the impact on us will be like, I would say it would have one positive impact. It will help us collectivize. Because for anything that is systemic, individual protests will have no impact. I mean, we have to collectivize, we have to, come together and protest against this. When it will affect me individually, that if I'm having to carry a child, an unwanted child, and the child is born without, by a process which was not consensual, then, I don't know, it's worse than rape, personally, if you ask me, because a one-time incident, no matter how much traumatic, and it is totally nonsensical, it is very painful, it is difficult to kind of, come out of it, but it's still possible. But having to endure, having to, carry through the consequence of that one time event for 9 months, and then for the rest of my life, either I bring up the child or I give up the child, whatever it is. It is, I think it's a permanent thing, and it's nobody's business to kind of make such a dictate or impose such a thing on me. Not at all. It's extremely humiliating, and it is atrocious. I'm at a loss for words for this at an individual level. But macro level things, they have, every cloud has a silver lining. If there's a state level something which is going against women, there will be a macro level protest, and that is our only ray of hope, I can say. We have to collectivize and protest.
It's just horrifying to think that a woman, how a woman at micro level feels the violence. It's not just. What have you have said that it's worse than a rape.
Yeah.
It's true. Thank you. I have been blown away by your talk. So enriching.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you for joining us today. It was a pleasure listening to you. Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you.